Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. You know, there's a lot of good news that's been going on, and we just keep winning. So if you hadn't heard, I've talked about how we won in the pistol brace rule, at least nationally. We won on Friday, and it was kind of kept on, hush-hush, because all the good news happens on Friday if you have not paid attention, or the real breaking news happens on Fridays, because they don't want you to pay attention. They want the story to die. Well, the Supreme Court heard the Cargill case, and guess what? Bump stocks are now 100% legal, at least nationally. Now, this brings up something that I didn't even think about, and unfortunately, it's a big deal for all of us in the 2A, is if your individual state has actually voted and actually passed things through their House and through their Senate in the state, and they've banned these individual items like pistol braces, like bump stocks, they're still illegal. Here's why. This nullifies the ATF, this decision in the Cargill case, nullifies the decision the ATF made to arbitrarily change rules. But the ones in the state, the laws that were passed, were actually done through Congress, through their individual Congress, or their methods of passing laws. If your governor wrote off something arbitrarily, this may be covered under that. But if it's passed by legal means, meaning that it went through the House and the Senate of your state, and the governor signed off on it, it's still banned. That's a big deal. And that was a kind of a eye-waking moment for me. William Kirk from Washington Gun Law, he brought this up. The way the decision was made in the Cargill case is very narrow in legal terms, so I rely on other legal people, because I'm not a lawyer, to kind of break this down. So I pay attention to him and Four Boxes Diner, or Five Box Diner, whichever one is, but they're lawyers, and they break it down using case law. And I was hoping that this would be, like everybody else, be giant wins, and they are giant wins. Let's not degrade these wins in any way, shape, or form. But this means that the fights that we've all had in the states need to continue, because even if the ATF were to come out tomorrow and say, give a blanket statement and say, we're banning all semi-automatics, still have to go through the House and the Senate to be legal, because then we'd have a leg to stand on when it goes to the Supreme Court. But if the House and the Senate at the national level pass it, it's kind of law of the land. And then we're going to have to go through lawfare to see if it should stand. When you have alphabet agencies like the ATF, who arbitrarily are making rules, though, that have not went through the process to make law, but it still becomes law, that's the gray area, and that's where we have a chance to attack these people, leftists that are trying to get rid of guns. That's the best way to put that. What's really sad and telling is the 3 dissenting opinions for this case, for Cargill, for the bump stock case. What they wrote was an appeal to emotions. One of them was stupid enough to say that 800 bullets a second were used because of this device. That shows the ignorance that these people that are trying to make a law for the 2A have. They're not in any way, shape, or form in the know. They don't look up to get knowledge, so they simply don't even pay attention because they go off of their emotion. And that's bad for us, because you can't appeal to people that have already made an emotional decision. That emotional decision is going to stick with them forever. You can sit there and you talk to them till they're blue in the face, but emotion's going to say that they're stopping, or these guys in particular are thinking they're stopping mass shootings, when in reality they're not stopping crap. The bump stocks, they haven't even proved without a doubt that the bump stocks were used in the Vegas shooting. Okay? Our legal system has not been able to stop mass shootings, despite the background checks, despite the red flag laws, despite anything that they've said they could do. So this shows, and it has shown for a long time, and we in the 2A, we know this, all of us that are 2A fans, We know this, that it isn't a legal thing. This is a problem with people's heads. And the more you see these tantrums thrown by people in today's society over minuscule things, the more you realize the uphill fight we're fighting. You know, it's daunting, but I still get hope when I see these things, these decisions, because it's showing that we're gaining momentum, that at least we have some modicum of legal legs to stand on, and that there's still enough people in the Supreme Court and in the legal system that's actually doing the work and actually reading the laws and interpreting them as they're supposed to be. Now, I say that because this decision went in our way, but if you look at how they came to this decision in the Cargo case, they used the literal letter of the law. And that is how we win cases time and time again. Because they're looking at the spirit of the law, of how it was written, the time frame of the law of how it was written, and the exact language. And what stopped the bump stock from being banned was the single function of a trigger written into the law itself in the NFA. So what that means is that when you pull the trigger, no other action happens on a fully automatic gun, and it will cycle and fire more rounds. Well, you have to pull the trigger and then push forward on a bump stock equipped gun for it to fire again. So that's where they actually held this up at. Held the case up and passed it in our favor, is because it didn't show a single function of the trigger. It required two functions to make this device work. Okay, I don't care about the bump stock thing because, to be truthful, I know that I can bump fire an AR-15 or an AK without having one of these. I always thought they were kind of hokey. I don't like the look of them. That said, I never had a problem with anyone having one. I have a couple of friends that had them back in the day. I don't know if they still have them because when they saw this pop up, they were kind of nervous because, as I said, anytime you have a firearms violation, you're like 20 years in jail. That's the minimum, usually, 15 to 20 years. You can have something as innocuous. A lot of us build AR-15s, have parts for AR-15s. If you have an AR-15 pistol and you have the parts you took off of it to make it a pistol, and you still have a buffer tube and a stock that will fit on that buffer tube for a normal AR-15 because you're keeping it, because spare parts, you have friends that tell you, hey man, this broke, I need a part, and you pull it out of your parts bin and you hand it to them. Okay, there's that thing. Or you sell it to them. Either way, it's a part. You don't care. But the way the ATF has the law, the language of the law actually says that's constructive intent if this had went the back way. That means if you have like HK trigger group assemblies and you have some that you bought in bulk, and why I'm using this is because you can still buy them accidentally like this, even from cheaper than dirt. And they're SEF, meaning that they're select fire trigger groups. Even if you never intended on putting one in a gun, and you're using it for the parts that are compatible with yours and are legal to put in your gun, having those parts gives the ATF a method to go after you because it's constructive intent. In their eyes, if they ever serve a warrant, they see that as you have the potential to do this. Not that you're going to do this, but you have the potential to construct this device and make a machine gun. Okay, or make a short-barreled rifle. Now, there's some legal precedents that you can use to kind of get out of those cases, but it's stupid. And that's how all gun laws seem to be, is that they're arbitrary and capricious is the best way to put it. The language isn't written in such a way that you can follow it 110%, and that's where we always have a leg to stand. It's going to cost you a lot if you're done up in one of these legal cases. And there was a point in time that our ATF was actually on our side. It wasn't until the presidents, specifically, starting with Obama and then into Trump, started using them as weapons against the people, because the way they saw it was an end run around congressional tie-ups so that they'd have to pass a law. Instead of doing that, they'd use the administrative state and just get it done. Well, that's the take the guns first and ask for permission later mentality, and look what that's got us. This is why I have a huge axe to grind against President Trump. If he had not said that, had he not moved into that mentality, had not given the option for this to be a thing, we wouldn't be fighting a lot of the battles we're fighting right now. These weren't even on the left's radar to bring up, and here we are. And now we're forced to look at this and see which of the two piles of crap we're going to vote for. And for me, that decision's already made. Mine was made when the Libertarian Party decided to run a communist, because that would have been my third party hope. But libertarians never get together and actually work together as a team. There's too much infighting there. And I'm too conservative, and I've seen what's happened to our country over the last 3 3/4 of a year now, that there's no way in hell I could vote for Biden again, especially seeing that the guy can't keep his head straight and can barely engage in anything. Plus, we've seen the highest level of inflation we've seen since the 90s, 80s, and 90s. I put that squarely on him and partially on the spending that Trump did. So as far as presidential election, there is only one choice, and that's President Trump. Now, whether he or not he can win, I'd like to think so, but I also am not so stupid to think that any of my presidential candidates could win just because it seems so apparent to me. With Trump specifically, I think there's a lot of people that just hear his name and hate him, that there is no accounting for in the polls. It doesn't matter how much pain has been put upon them financially or anything. They're going to vote against the man because Trump bad, orange man bad. I think that there's a lot of independents that are of that mentality, that orange man bad, and it doesn't matter how much pain they get put upon them, they're going to vote that way. And I think that's going to be a surprise that a lot of people aren't factoring in. The court case I see as kind of a no one cares anymore. I think it's kind of great, to be honest, that it happened, because it's making a lot of law and order people look at the legal system again, and maybe people that have, done something in their past. I'm not one of them. I have a lot of friends that have had some issues when they were younger and still paying for it, that I'd like to see be able to get into the 2A. And want to get back in the 2A or get into the 2A period. But they can't, because, those past mistakes when they were young people. And these are full-fledged adults now. And they've had to live, 10, 20 years without being a full-fledged citizen, because our government said that once they became a felon for a past mistake, despite serving their time, paying restitution, it being a nonviolent offense, they're still felons, so they can't own a gun or they can't vote. And that's the bright spot I see with Trump being convicted and now a felon, is maybe those law and order types that always, back the blue no matter who. When I say back the blue, I mean back law enforcement. Maybe they're looking at that a little more, and maybe they'll get some more mileage out of it and give some more grace to some people that have long since paid their due to society. I wasn't this guy before. There was a point in time where I would have sided with the state and said, damn right, these people screwed up, they're felons, they should never have it. Then I started looking at really how much of a statist I was. And when I say statist, how much I walked lock and step with the legal system and with law and order, and then seeing how much they would abuse me and do whatever they wanted to get what they wanted. Not me, not do what's right for society, but to do what they wanted to get whatever means they wanted. And that came to its apex during the COVID stuff. When they started locking people out of their businesses and saying they had to shut down, sending kids home from school so that they, the one place that they had that was safe for them. I say that because, coming from an abusive family, that kind of was my safe space back in the day before my dad got my mom squared away. And now I was thinking about it, when I worked for school systems, what about those poor kids that was their safe space? That was their one meal. And you just locked them away and didn't care. There's that hit me. Then there was the fact that they were forcing down vaccines. They were shutting down churches and bars, any public gatherings. And the only thing that makes sense to me that why you would do that is because people talk. And if you get enough people together, you start having voices of dissent against you. That's how rebellions are fomented, is when you have people put together that actually say, hey, this isn't right, something needs to be done. And all those people that, even the really churchy people, which I'm becoming one apparently, there's a few people in those groups that actually think like I do. That they're, hey man, when you tell me I can't go to my house of worship, you set yourself against me, and you set yourself against my people. I understand the COVID stuff, I really do. I mean, there was a lot of fear in the first couple of weeks, but within a month or two, we knew very early on what this was and what we were fighting. And if you look at what's happened, it looks like they weaponized, they kept that fear going and used it against the American people so that they had to stay in their cages. And I think it was a test run to see what they could do in the future. And that's just me, maybe that's a conspiracy theory, but it does look that way because the world still hasn't recovered, in my opinion, since COVID. You're seeing a lot of statists right now. You're seeing a lot of lazy people that are just willing to go along with the flow of life because it's too comfortable. And the truth is, anytime you grow and stretch past what you've been as a person, as you grow to a better person, grow into a better person, and you're leveling up, things become uncomfortable. That chapter of your life of where comfort was 100% a guaranteed thing has to end so you can grow. How you move and advance. So that's what I see has happened to our society. And it reflects on the 2A. You go and you hear these guys that are like, well, I like my guns, but if the government says I can't do this, I'm not going to do it. Okay. That's fine. But guess what? There's some of us that gave up on listening to the government a long time ago because it doesn't seem like we can ever please them. And if you can never please someone and never ever agree on a rule set so that you don't have to worry every time you do something, you're in the wrong place. And that's what I've seen happen time and time again with the ATF, the FBI, is that there is no common rule set for us anymore. These guys are fighting a battle where they see me, despite being an ally for a long time with a lot of these guys, as the enemy. And I'm not the only one they see as an enemy. When you start seeing the American people as enemy, that's when you got a problem. And I think that's what's been going on for a long time in our country. And you see it in the legal system, you see it in the governmental system, and it's time that patriots, and I mean this in the actual original sense of patriots, start standing up and making their word known, make their voice known. Because if you don't, look what happened to communist China. I hate to keep saying this, but look throughout history and see what happens when a society becomes unarmed. When the government becomes the rule of everything. People die. And the longer we stay silent, the more likely that stuff happens. So I couldn't stay silent. That's where I started speaking out. That's where I started going to Santa Fe. That's where I came up with the idea for New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. So, like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.